Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Today, I'd like to talk about the titles of the Star Wars films and what they mean. Now, before this, Comic-Con was this weekend. There was no real Star Wars news. Disney represented mostly their Marvel brand, and oh my, talk about announcements. They really went to town. And I would definitely recommend checking that out. Star Wars news is very likely to come at D23, which is in the end of August, which is the Disney Expo. Which is hard to believe that in 4 years it'll be 100 years since Walt Disney and his brother founded the studio. Walt and Roy, I believe his brother's name was. And we're going to get some stuff there. We know for sure that we're going to be getting some footage of The Mandalorian. Or at least it's footage that's going to finally get online officially. I have to confess to you, I have not watched any of the bootleg footage from Star Wars Celebration because I want to see the official footage in the way that they officially want to share it with us online. I suspect that there will probably be a trailer or footage from The Mandalorian, considering that the show will start in November, if I'm not mistaken. And it is likely we'll be getting some news of The Rise of Skywalker, and I can almost guarantee one of their behind-the-scenes reels, which are now a bit of a tradition. I don't know how deep I'm going to get into that kind of stuff, because I don't really want to know any more than I already know about The Rise of Skywalker. That being said, let's talk about the titles. Now, this is a little bit complicated. So the original film was simply called Star Wars. In 1981, for its second re-release in theaters, the movie was given the subtitle Episode 4, A New Hope. Because the previous year, 1980, The Empire Strikes Back was released out of the gate with the subtitle Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. For the sake of simplicity, we're gonna start with A New Hope. So the original Star Wars film is called A New Hope. Now, what does that mean? Well, I think it means that Luke Skywalker is the new hope for the galaxy. Now, the interesting thing, I was talking about this with my dad this morning, that if you had started the movie with that subtitle, if Star Wars had come out in 1977 and said, A New Hope, at that time, I don't think it would have made sense, at least my own personal opinion. Because I don't think people knew if there was going to be a sequel to Star Wars. And if Star Wars had been a one-and-done property, how could Luke be the new hope for the galaxy if we don't really have any idea where the story is going after Star Wars? Or even if the story will continue. If you look at it, Star Wars is a pretty self-contained movie. It does not need a sequel. So just my personal opinion, and I may be wrong, is that the subtitle, A New Hope, would not have made sense if it had been on Star Wars from the beginning. And also, as the story goes on, we learn that Luke is not only the new hope for the galaxy, So is his twin sister Leia. I think she's equally a new hope for the galaxy just as much as her brother is. Yet, of course, that had not been decided when the original film came out. Nor had it been decided that Luke could help redeem his father. So Luke is a new hope by destroying the Death Star. Yes, that's true. But in my mind, how could he be a new hope if there were no sequels? So I'm actually glad that that George Lucas waited to add that subtitle. But what I think it means is that Luke and Leia are the new hope that will save the galaxy from the clutches of the Empire and the clutches of Darth Vader. Which indeed they do. Now we jump ahead to The Empire Strikes Back. I think of all the Star Wars movie titles, this is the most self-explanatory. The Empire's Death Star got blown up, so they're going to strike back. It's funny because my nephew, who's 6, mixes up the word Emperor and Empire. So he thinks the movie The Empire Strikes Back means the Emperor Strikes Back. Which I suppose he's not wrong, because it is the Emperor's empire. So that's pretty simple. The Empire is striking back at the rebels because of the destruction of the Death Star. And because of the rebel victory. And certainly they do strike back, because in The Empire Strikes Back, our heroes lose. The Empire strikes back hard. And actually wins. Oh my. Now we jump to Return of the Jedi. Now this is where things get complicated. Is this Jedi singular? Or Jedi plural? Is Luke the Jedi that returns? I don't think so, because, well, where has he been? He's not been hiding. I think that maybe you could take it in a couple of ways. Number one, Luke becomes a Jedi Knight, and so maybe that's the Return of the Jedi. Because there are no Jedi Knights. Except Yoda. Yoda, of course, dies. And so Luke is pretty much the only one left. And Yoda tells him he needs to confront Vader before he can be a Jedi Knight. In fact, Luke becomes a Jedi the moment he turns off his lightsaber and decides not to strike down his father. And says boldly to the Emperor, "No, I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me." In that moment, Luke passes the test and becomes a Jedi. The Jedi return in that moment. The Jedi philosophy. The Jedi way embodied by Luke Skywalker. That's one way to look at it. Number two, the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. When he ceases being Darth Vader and returns to being Anakin, he's still a Jedi. Therefore, it could be plural. But before we get to plural, maybe it's Anakin who returns is the Jedi. The title is referring to, and not Luke. And the third is that it could be plural. It could be the return of the Jedi. Meaning more than one. Luke and Anakin. Leia, to a degree. And hinting at the future of the Jedi Order. Which we know Luke does establish. Or did establish before things went kind of crazy. So let me recap that. Number one, Luke becomes a Jedi. Number two, Anakin throws off Darth Vader and becomes a Jedi again. And number three, it could be plural and referring to the Jedi Order as a whole. Those are some possibilities. There are more, I'm sure. Now we jump to the Phantom Menace. Now, I've heard that title criticized. I think it's a great title. We, of course, at the time, when it was released, I don't think people were entirely sure what that meant. What in the world is the Phantom Menace? As the movies progressed, I think we learned that it's Palpatine himself. He is the Phantom Menace. He's a phantom, he's hidden, and he's a menace. But it could also refer to the Sith as a whole. As we learn in the Phantom Menace, the Sith Order has been believed by the Jedi to be extinct for 1,000 years. We know, of course, as Darth Maul reveals himself on the dunes of Tatooine, that the Sith have returned. So either you could take it as the Sith Order, which has been operating in secret for 1,000 years, or the Phantom Menace, or, as is most commonly accepted, and the one that I agree with, Palpatine is the Phantom Menace, because he's the Dark Lord of the Sith, hiding, almost in plain sight, but is indeed that menace that is a phantom. And of course, that's not made clear until we get to the other films in the prequel trilogy. So I think it's either the Emperor or it's the Sith Order in general. Now we jump. Or actually, you know what? A thought just came to me, so let me do something here. Maybe, and I doubt this is the intention, but I think with art you can interpret it any way. Maybe Anakin's the Phantom Menace. Now, obviously, Anakin is not aware of what's going to happen to him eventually. But maybe it's a hidden menace because the potential is there. Obi-Wan senses it. The Council senses it. But, they know the future is not fixed. So maybe that's the Phantom Menace. I don't know. That's a pretty wild idea, but hey, anything goes. But I'm inclined to believe it is Palpatine. Now we jump to Attack of the Clones. Yet again, pretty self-explanatory. And yeah, it's been considered a dumb title. And I agree. But I think maybe the intention was to go with kind of that old-fashioned pulpy adventure. Kind of the old pulp serials, the old, adventure stories. Just to have that real kind of Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, Attack of the Clones, big exclamation point on the end. And I think that if you look at it in that sense, it kind of makes sense. And special thanks to Joseph Scrimshaw at Force Center for pointing that out a couple of years ago. And just as a little nitpick, the clones don't really attack. They defend, but I suppose in their defending they attack. So it's a little weird, but it's a very simple, straightforward title. It basically tells you what's going to happen in the movie. So there you go. Now we come to Revenge of the Sith. I'd say this one's pretty self-explanatory. The plan of the Sith, which was hatched 1,000 years ago to take over the galaxy by subterfuge, has occurred. And the Sith get their revenge. Now, as far as I know, Palpatine didn't have any, particular vendetta. Didn't have one particular Jedi he was trying to get revenge on for something. But I think it's more getting revenge on the Jedi Order. Maybe it's getting revenge on the Jedi Order because they defeated the Sith Order once, long ago. which is true in canon. We know that 1,000 years before the movies, the Sith died because they destroyed each other in their petty power struggles. But we also know that the Jedi had once defeated the Sith long ago. The Sith had conquered Coruscant. The Jedi drove them away. So maybe it's revenge in that sense, but I just think it's revenge of, the Sith finally defeating their ancient rivals. And Palpatine's plans within plans finally come to fruition. And he's not done, because, as we know, the Sith are always planning something. And also, he was able to convert the Chosen One into the Dark Lord of the Sith. What a victory that is. Okay, now we jump ahead many years to The Force Awakens. This one's still a pretty mysterious title, I think, but the way I look at it is it's The Force Awakens in Rey. The Force Awakens within her. Strong enough, I think, that even Snoke senses it. And I think that, as far as I'm concerned, Rey is The Force Awakens. Meaning, I think that the Force has chosen her, because it's not that she is powerful in and of herself. I think the Force is flowing through her in an attempt to restore balance. So the Force Awakens within Rey. In The Last Jedi, I think we learned that because Luke has shown himself off from the Force chose someone to combat the darkness of Kylo Ren. So yet again, I think The Force Awakens is the Force Awakening within Rey. The Last Jedi, yet again, is it plural or singular? Now, the line is spoken by Luke in the movie. He says, I will not be the last Jedi. So I think what you're dealing with is plural in the sense that Luke was the last Jedi for a time, but is not anymore once Rey has come along. But I think that what it means is it could be referring to Luke. But I think, for me, I take it as more the last of the Jedi. And that's Luke and Rey. And once Luke passes on, it's Rey. We shall see what the next movie brings. So I think the title could be A, Luke, B, Rey, or C, both of them. And as we saw in the very last shot, the Force is continuing to awaken throughout the galaxy. In Broom Kid on Kantanika. Alright, now we jump to Rogue One. That, I think, is I like the title immediately because it's a callback to the Rogue Squadron, which is the squadron in the Snowspeeders on the Battle of Hoth. They're called that. Rogue Group. Rogue Squadron. Rogue I like because, rogue, like thief, like sneaky, roguish, and that's what our characters in Rogue One are. And I think I like the idea that you can argue that the Rogue Squadron later in the movies is a reference to this original group of those who stole the Death Star plans and unfortunately gave their lives. So the title I don't think has really any deeper meaning, We know in the movie that that is what Bodhi Rook chooses to call their group. Kind of randomly, just picking a name. But I think that that name stuck. And their heroic sacrifice made Rogue One a name worthy of remembrance. Now we jump to... I kind of got ahead of myself here. I meant to do the movies chronologically in terms of release dates. But let's just jump ahead to Solo. Solo, a Star Wars story. Which, by the way, Rogue One was called Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Solo, a Star Wars story, pretty simple. It's about Han Solo. We learn in the movie how he gets his name. Because he's alone. And, yeah, okay, maybe that scene caused consternation for many fans. But I think it pretty much sums up everything about this character. And what he eventually becomes is the guy who thinks he can handle things on his own. A lone kind of fellow. So that's pretty simple. Now we come to probably the biggest mystery in terms of titles right now. And that's The Rise of Skywalker. Now we could fill a book with theories, but I'm just going to say, I'm going to list a couple of ideas. One, it could be the redemption of Ben Solo. Because he is a Skywalker and he will rise in the light. Two, it could be, and this is kind of out on a limb, Leia rising to become the leader of the galaxy. Three, it could be the resurrection of Luke Skywalker. I doubt that. Four, it could be Rey taking on the mantle of Skywalker, basically being adopted posthumously by Luke. And taking on the mantle of Rey Skywalker to continue his legacy. And five, maybe, and people have theorized, and I don't necessarily agree, maybe that's what the Order of Force users are called. They are no longer Jedi, they are Skywalkers. I doubt that entirely. I'm going to go, personally, with the idea that Rey takes on the mantle of Skywalker. And that's what the title means. But it could be a combination of these things. It could be she takes on the mantle of Skywalker. And it could be that Ben Solo was redeemed. It's possible. So those are my thoughts on the titles of the movies. They all mean something. Some are more straightforward. Some are a little more complicated. But they all have meaning. And I have come to enjoy all the titles, even Attack of the Clones. That each name of each movie has a meaning and it works in its own context. Let me know what you think about some of the more mysterious titles. And also let me know, do these titles work for you? My name is Brendan Moore, and that noise you hear is my ventilator, and thank you so much for tuning in. Fate turned as they were not. My Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.